Hello everyone, this is Business Incorporated on Channels Television. I am Bisi Adebayo. Coming up, pilots of South Africa's Mango airline down tools over wage dispute, and Egypt's agricultural export reaches 4.1 million tons in the third quarter of 2017, plus a look at dealing with corruption in Africa's resource revenue. But let's begin from the stock markets across Africa, where Nigeria's all-share index is looking up with a 0.07% increase at intraday. The GSA index is also 0.76% up. Egypt's index is down 2.32% at intraday. The Kenyan Burst closed 0.09% higher on Friday. And the Gulf stock markets are mixed at intraday on Monday, with Saudi Arabia recovering from Sunday's losses as the banking sector rolls on Alinma Bank's better-than-expected earnings. The main Saudi index edged up 0.2% in the first hour. Dubai's index is flat at intraday as Emma Properties fell 0.7%. Abu Dhabi is 0.11% up as other properties gained 1.6% in heavy trade. And Qatar's index was down 0.5% at intraday, although Qatar National Bank rose 0.8% after reporting solid third-quarter earnings last week. And European markets edged higher on Monday morning as investors monitored the latest in political news coming out of Austria, Spain and the UK. Well, for more on the European markets, let's talk to Conrad Bussen, who is at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. It's good to see you again, Conrad. Equity markets worldwide have started the week on a positive note. Of course, that's after the global growth forecast. Has the German share index jumped above the magic 13,000 mark?
Yes, it has, BC, and it at the moment is nicely keeping up the positive mood. It's staying above 13,000 points. And you know, the International Monetary Fund's upgrade of global growth is not the only piece of positive news supporting the market. In China, producer prices in September have increased more than analysts had forecast at an annual rate of 6.9%. And that's, of course, an indicator for a strong, dynamic economy in China, which allows companies on the wholesale level to demand higher prices from their customers. And speaking of China, remember that this Wednesday, the Communist Party of China will have its annual Congress, its party Congress. And while this Congress is happening, a very important piece of news is expected to be published. Third quarter GDP. Everyone now on the markets is focusing on that. And of course, given this relatively strong inflation data from September, now there are many hopes here in Frankfurt and on the markets generally that the growth data in China for the third quarter will be a strong piece of data.
Now let's talk about the political factors driving the markets down. We see Brexit, Catalonia, which are making headlines again. And of course, Austria's government seems to shift further to the right.
Yes, and you know, adding to all this is more political news causing uncertainty on the markets. We here in Germany had regional elections yesterday, state elections in a part of Germany that didn't bring about very positive results for the party of Chancellor Angela Merkel, which means that for Merkel it will become a bit more difficult to form her own coalition government on the federal level here in Germany, in Berlin. But, you know, with regard to all this political uncertainty, it's as if investors are saying the more uncertain the political situation gets, the more it is reasonable to sort of bet on business as a field to trust in, at least as long as economic growth rates remain strong and at least as long as businesses manage to beat analysts' expectations with their earnings reports. This week we'll get a huge amount of earnings reports from many companies: Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Johnson & Johnson, Daimler, SAP. All those companies will report about their third quarter earnings, and the current upbeat mood on the stock market here in Frankfurt might be an indicator that investors are bracing for some positive news there.
Now, talking about corporate news now, Saudi Aramco is the talk of the market. Rumors are that the IPO might not happen after all. What are you hearing on Frankfurt's trading floors?
Well, people here are talking about a lot about those rumors, those reports that the IPO of Saudi Aramco might eventually not happen. The report is in the Financial Times, which quotes unidentified sources, but the Financial Times is one of the most renowned piece of journalism in the business world. So, of course, it gives a lot of reason to talk about this. Saudi Aramco plans to float 5% of its shares, worth about $2 trillion US. And the question is for the company whether to go to London or to New York. Both will meet obstacles. London is concerned about corporate governance, as Saudi Aramco only plans to float 5% of the total of shares. The corporate governance rules in London demand that more than 25% of a company should be brought public with an IPO. And in New York, it's the Saudis who are concerned. Remember how the parliament in the United States, with the support of a court, allowed that victims of 9/11 sue the state of Saudi Arabia because those terrorists at the time all originated in Saudi Arabia. You know, this might mean for Saudi Arabia to have doubts whether or not to really do such important business with the New York Stock Exchange. Instead, a private placement would have some logic. That would mean that Saudi Aramco takes the share it wants to float and sells them to an assorted amount of worldwide funds, of corporate, of institutional investors, and you know, by this way it would also have a bit more of a guarantee to get the $2 trillion it wants to make.
Well, we'll have our eyes on that developing story, and we'll see how it all plays out in the coming days. Well, many thanks, Conrad Busson, for talking to us, and we'll see you again tomorrow.